standing by is State Attorney General Jeff Landry. Mr. Jeff, not the most optimum circumstance for a conversation this morning, to say the least. I said a couple of times over the last couple of days, I said, well, good Lord, man, I did this show just a couple of weeks ago. Who would have thought that within 15 days of each other, this kind of tragedy could take place?
Yeah, it's been terrible. It really has. You know, we spent the day yesterday visiting those officers who were still in the hospital. One of them got discharged, visiting with their family. There's so much that we don't know. There's so much that we know now. But the one thing is that we lost three officers. Three officers were murdered while attempting to carry out their jobs. You know, they got up on Sunday, they went to work, and they never made it home. So
Mr. Jeff, I'm certainly not asking you to breach any confidence, but when you speak to families, to wives, to children whose husbands, whose fathers are hospitalized, these brave men, what I wouldn't know what to say to these people. What do you say?
Well, I tell them the same thing that my mother always taught me to tell them, is that we're praying for you. We have faith in the Lord that He is going to, bring you through this tragedy, and we want to be there for your support. We hope that those prayers and our presence, bring you some comfort. And we just want to make sure, that the treatment that they're getting and that they're being comforted, that there's adequate facilities for the family to be able to go in and out and visit those loved ones, and that just doesn't end when they're just in the hospital, but that afterwards. The greatness about the law enforcement community is that it's a family, and normally in these times, their family grows. And here in Baton Rouge, I'll tell you, the community has been great in uplifting the spirits of these families and these officers. I spoke one of the officers, who's still in the hospital, who didn't have life-threatening injuries, but is still out there with a shattered arm, where he was shot. I got to visit with him, and the first thing he told me was he wanted to thank me. I mean, think about that. That's the type of individual that we have out there that protects our community. That's what police officers do. They make little money, but give a whole lot.
Let me ask you this, Jeff. Our police association president yesterday had some pretty sharp words, calling this the gunman in Baton Rouge a wingnut, and then he went on to say that we're not doing enough to weed out these kinds of people, that we need more help for those who have mental illness, and we can do better, and we need to do better to protect police. Your reaction to that?
Well, I agree with him on all those fronts. I gave my opinion after the tragic theater shooting that happened in Lafayette last year, and again, we see these tragic events play out around the country. And the first thing I said is that we have to recognize that the policies and the decisions we made decades ago and how we deal with mental illness in this country evidently has been wrong, and that we need to rethink the way that we deal with people with mental illness. I remember being a sheriff's deputy in the 90s. We dealt with them in a different manner. There were facilities by which we could bring them to. Those facilities are pretty much gone today. So I think that the country as a whole, we need to rethink the policy of how we deal with mental illness. When it comes to resources for law enforcement officers, I will tell you, we're constantly struggling. Our agencies are constantly. Look what our Department of Justice went through in this last round of budget cuts. We were cut greater than any department in the state, and right now are being called on to handle parts of these tragedies and parts of the situations that arose in Baton Rouge. It's the ability to prioritize our needs versus our wants.